why? Adam Schefter does now join Jen, Gabe, and Chewy. Adam, we are obviously talking about the David Bakhtiari situation and how the way that the Green Bay Packers have handled it has opened them up to speculation about what is the deal, Seinfeld. What are you hearing through some of your connections?
It's come up that I cannot imagine that there's any way that he missed the game because he's unhappy that the game was on turf. I think that's preposterous to me. Preposterous. Like, you're not going to miss a game because you don't like playing on. I don't think so. I think it has to 100% to be physically. He's not feeling right. I mean, it's that simple. Now, you're telling me that they wouldn't acknowledge that on Sunday, that he wasn't feeling right. And I think with him, there's so much sensitivity because he's been through so much physically. It's been such an ordeal, so that if and when he's not feeling right, it's like, oh no, for him mentally, physically, every part of it. So it's just you hope that he is feeling okay. But it was asked, I've heard oh, maybe it's he didn't want to play on turf. That can't be it, right? Like, you're a pro. I mean, there are times you don't want to do the morning shift. There are times you don't want to work on holidays, but you do it, right? Like, that's his job to play.
Right, but if he's hurt, he's not 100%. Okay,
right.
He's not even practicing, and he feels that being on turf increases the chances of him further injuring himself. Then, if I'm David Bakhtiari, I want to play as many games as I can. I know and feel that I have a greater chance of an injury. I pass on this game. It gives me a better chance of playing 12 of the remaining games because I'm not 100%, which we all know. Because he's not practicing. I'd ask you, have you ever heard of how many players that, he might never practice the whole season and still play every game or almost all the games? Have you ever heard of that before?
Yeah, DeAndre Hopkins did it last week.
All right.
Yeah, and he's done it regularly in the past. I mean, it's not there aren't a lot, but there are some veterans that can do that type of thing. I mean, ideally you'd like to have them practice, but there are some people that they just try to preserve. There are the veteran rest days for certain players. Like, they don't practice Wednesdays. That's standard. So I just think, obviously, there had to be some sort of setback. He wasn't feeling right. The fact it's on turf, maybe that didn't help the decision. Fine, but I don't think that because he's hated playing on turf, well, I'm not playing on turf this week. Like, that's not it.
Well, and I think that the way that the team handled it, Adam, is really continuing to push this snowball down the mountain, and it keeps gathering, speed because they got defensive, as opposed to, I think, what Homer is alluding to, just saying and again, it's, this has been something he's dealing with. I think it just needed to be like, look, we respect the hell out of David Bakhtiari. And if he tells us that the knee is bothering him and he thinks that he and we would be better off if he takes the week, we're going to do that. Mm-hmm. Like, there are ways of putting a message out there that are more consumable by the public than the way that this has been handled. And I think that's why there's been such wild speculation about what it could have been. Right? There's a lot of circumstances here that convened to create this narrative that perhaps the turf was at play.
Yeah, yeah, because he was so outspoken against it last week, and then the game's on turf, and then all of a sudden he doesn't play. So everybody, I think, is adding up all these things, but it doesn't. I don't think it adds up like that. My guess is, at some point in time he wasn't feeling right, and they decided, it's not a good idea to put him in that spot. You have to be very careful with him, and it's not because it's because he's such a warrior. You want him out there, and he's so important to the team. That's why you say, okay, he's not going to play right now because he's not physically right. Obviously I'll make some more calls on it, but that's my read on it. And Jen, to your point, yes, it should have been very simple. When David Bakhtiari feels he can play, he's going to be out there every single time. He wasn't feeling the way he should and the way he needs to play. So we made the decision to give him a week off.
I would love to have you explore it. Because what I want to know is, I think that LaFleur thought he was going to play. And I think LaFleur believes that they would have won if he had played. And the player who as I think you would agree, players do this. The player who took the place of Bakhtiari, Walker, Bakhtiari told him Saturday night, Walker said this, which they'll tell him not to say in the future. Bakhtiari told me Saturday night he's probably not going to be able to play. But I think players do that to teammates to help this young kid a little bit. But I'm not sure that he had told the team yet. And so I think LaFleur thought he was going to play. And that's why this has all been and this is why, the tone of LaFleur, was it yesterday or what was it? Trying to think of the day. It's the most upset he's ever been. I'm not talking about it anymore. I've never heard that tone from him in a press conference.
Well, it's also because they're coming off a game they should have won.
Correct.
Like they had that game. That game should have been over, and they should have put that team away. They should be 2-0 with 2 road wins, coming home to play the Saints, and now they're 1-1. And you could just imagine how nice that would have been to pocket 2 road wins like that, to come home, and there's no reason they shouldn't have done that. They had that game. They had outplayed that team. And then for whatever reason, in the fourth quarter, they gave it. I'm watching that game. You didn't think Atlanta could win that game until late in the game. Wow.
Because you didn't think they could score soon and fast enough to come back.
Yeah, Green Bay really played very well, controlled the game. And the Packers, it's a story of the NFL. They should be 2-0, but they're not. They're 1-1. And so they gave a game away.
And that's part of the learning curve with this young team, right? There are going to be games that they clearly should win that they lose, in part because they're young. I know there's been a lot of criticism about the defense as well. I want to pivot to something that I heard our friends on Unsportsmanlike talking about this morning. That's Evan Cohen, Chris Canty, and Michelle Smallman handling the new ESPN Radio morning show. And they were talking about the MVP race. Now, it's very early, obviously. We're only in week 2. But apparently Micah Parsons has been doing all of the things, making himself just invaluable to that Dallas Cowboys defense. And they were talking about the trend and the narrative that the MVP, for whatever reason, much like the Heisman Award in college football, is a quarterback award. Is there any way that the league would ever, and the suggestion that Evan Cohen threw out there and that Michelle Smallman threw out there was, like in baseball, there's a Cy Young Award. It is specifically for a pitcher. Nobody else can win it. So you know going in what your competition is. And if you're a different player, sorry about that if you play a different position. Should the NFL consider doing something like that? The quarterback has become such an important position in football. Should they give it its own Cy Young-ish award?
Well, no, because I don't think so, because they do it in their own way. They give a Defensive Player of the Year award. So if the defensive player like Micah Parsons stands out so much, well, he is going to win the Defensive Player of the Year award. And by the way, if he plays so exceptionally well, he could find his way into the MVP conversation. And if somehow there's not a quarterback that rises up, like right now, I think Tua, after 2 weeks, is the favorite to win the MVP for whatever that's worth after 2 weeks. Like, these things change week to week anyway. It's still so early with 15 weeks left. Doesn't mean a lot to me. But I can tell you this, that if Micah Parsons plays that way over the next 15 weeks, the same way as the first 2 weeks, he's going to be in the MVP conversation. Is it going to be harder for him to win it? Yeah. But if he does, can you imagine the glory that comes with that? Like, people will be chasing him, trying to become the next defensive player to win an NFL MVP award. Like, it'll stand out and shine out just the way it did when Charles Woodson won the Heisman Trophy at Michigan, right? There are certain people, if you accomplish something so grand, it stands out even more. So I don't think there's a need for the creation of another award to, best quarterback in the league. You know what, Jim? The best quarterback in the league usually gets paid. That's kind of a nice reward, too. Then they also win the MVP. Another player can break through and win the award. We've seen running backs win it. I don't know the last time, if ever, we've seen an NFL defensive MVP.
Is it Lawrence Taylor? I was going to ask you this question. I've already given him the MVP. He's the MVP. He's already been compared to Lawrence Taylor. If any defensive player is compared to Lawrence Taylor, they automatically win the award. If he plays as he has and Dallas has a great year, he will be the MVP, and he should be. If anybody thinks that he's as good or even considered to be as good as Lawrence Taylor. I will defer to you on my theory. What do you think?
Well, Lawrence Taylor won the MVP award in 1986. So he has won it. And I'm looking to see if there's another defensive player that has won the award since then. No. Quarterback. Like, okay, the last time.
I mean, you got LT in there, and you got Adrian Peterson in there.
Yeah, running back.
Mm-hmm.
LT 2006, Sean Alexander 2005, Marshall Faulk 2000, Terrell Davis 1998, Barry Sanders 1997, Emmitt Smith 1993, Thurman Thomas 91, Marcus Allen 85, Earl Campbell. I'm just looking at the history.
And look, I'll make a statement here. Go ahead, Schefty.
Yeah. Alan Page won as a defensive player in 1971. Okay.
Yeah.
Alan Page won, and then Mark Mosley won as a kicker in 1982, and Lawrence Taylor won in 86. We haven't had an NFL MVP who's a defensive player since 1986. And by the way, people are comparing Micah Parsons to Lawrence Taylor. So if he is indeed Lawrence Taylor, and if he indeed dominates defensively over 17 weeks, he can win the NFL MVP.
You just rattled off all of those running backs in that list there. I'll go out on what I think is a very solid branch, solid limb, and say that a running back will never win the NFL MVP award again because of the evolution of the league. But I still don't think it's fair that it automatically goes to a quarterback. Yeah, I'd be willing to say ever.
Oh, no, that's not going to happen. Because at some
the
point,
running back that will win it, and one will be one who can catch the ball out of the backfield in addition to running.
But then I think they make that like a hybrid position.
No, you're still a running back. The way the running back is used will be different, and the number of yards from scrimmage will be so incredible that the running back will win it.
And I know that doesn't apply to a different.
Adrian Peterson was the last running back in 2002. It's been 10 years, 11 years, so the game's evolved. And yes, it may be a little while before we see a running back win again. That definitely could be the case, but there will be a running back who wins the award at some point.
I don't think so. I feel very confident in this take.
I'll be dead.
You put it on the poll. Will a running back ever win the NFL MVP award again? I feel very confident in this, just the way that the league has evolved, the way that passing has become. And I know that it's cyclical, but I mean, there will never be a situation where you're using a guy the way that we used to use Adrian Peterson. I like your idea about a Deebo Samuel type of thing where it's kind of a hybrid.
No, it'll be a running back, but the running back will catch a lot of passes out of the backfield. They're using them more that way now. McCaffrey would be.
Sure.
If he stayed healthy. What if a running back accounts for like 3,000 yards, which could happen rushing and receiving? That person's going to be MVP.
Yeah, I suppose, but you're still calling him a running back.
But he is. He's going to be a halfback. He'll have that position. It's not. Help me, Adam. I'm being killed. I'm counting on you.
I just disagree wholeheartedly. Adam, we appreciate you hanging out with us. I had a whole bunch of other stuff I wanted to chat with you about. A.J. Dillon, Cam Akers, that type of stuff. Should the Packers be... All right, let's do it. Should the Packers be looking at a Cam Akers? I know that they were in on the Jonathan Taylor sweepstakes. It didn't work out. Should Cam Akers be somebody they're kicking the tires on?
Well, I don't think that they have. I don't think they were one of the teams that has had discussions with the Rams. Cam Akers is somebody the Rams have been looking to move on from the last couple of years. He's had, I think, 29 yards in his last 20 carries. I don't think he's going to play again for the Rams, would be my guess. We'll see how this shakes out here this week or next week, but I would think at some point in time they're going to move on from him. There's Cam Akers was very accomplished there for a while, but has not produced for them lately, which is one of the reasons I think they're looking to move on.
All right, Adam. We appreciate you hanging out with us. Have a great week. We'll talk to you again soon.
Thank you. Have a great week, everybody.
He's Adam Schefter, always bringing the juice, always bringing the insight. We appreciate having him here.
Have you ever argued with him as much as you did on that?
Argued with Schefty?
Yeah.
No, that was barely an argument. I just don't think it will ever happen again.
There will never be. I feel there will.
I feel very confident that there will never be.
Okay.
Never be. Ever be. They just don't use the running back the way that they used to use them.
That is correct. They
And
won't.
I don't think that they will give here's the thing. Here's what it comes down to, Homer. It's not so much that there might not be another great running back who they're using out of the backfield who's catching passes as well. It's that performance will never surpass whatever the best quarterback in the league does. That's the bottom line.
You can be correct every year but one and be wrong.
So you're taking the field. That's what you're doing.
Yes, totally.
You're just playing the odds is what you're doing.
No, because I think running backs now, kids don't want to be running backs anymore. They want to be wide receivers. So, you can take some. McCaffrey's the best example. And even the kid in Atlanta now.
Bijan Robinson.
Yes, if you start throwing to him in the flat, and in addition to him running the ball, like I said, I'd have to look for how many yards from scrimmage. Somebody will get to 3,000.
If Micah Parsons has to be extraordinary as a defensive player to even sniff an MVP conversation, what would a running back have to do?
Same.
Extraordinary. I think he'd have to be better than extraordinary, because now again you're talking about an extraordinary defensive player also being in the conversation. None of them are going to surpass whatever the best quarterback that year does. It just won't happen. The best quarterback in the league will always get deferential treatment when it comes to MVP.
That's why you have to be Lawrence Taylor like. Plus, very important is the success Dallas has. Not a lot of belief in Mike McCarthy across the board, or Dak Prescott. So if they did really well, it would mean that people would be more apt to look at Parsons. That's the edge he has.
I do think people are coming around on Mike McCarthy. And again, the more success they have, the more coming around they will do. We'll take a break here on Jen, Gabe, and Chewy. Roll on.